Describe a piece of good advice that you gave to someone. You should say to whom you gave the advice, what the advice was, why you gave the advice, and what the result was, how he or she followed your advice.
A while back, one of my close friends was really upset after not passing her chemistry exam, which was a huge shock to her, to be honest. At that point, I felt it was important to step in and offer some guidance. So there we were, sitting in the cafeteria, and she was almost in tears. I just felt like I had to say something. And I told her, "Look, maybe it's time to switch up your study tactics. How about we try looking at the material in a different way? Instead of cramming everything the night before, let's break it down into chunks and tackle it piece by piece." The reason I gave this advice was because I had faced a similar situation in my own studies before. I found that changing my approach made a real difference, and I hoped it would for her too. And it really did. She actually took my advice to heart and started organizing her study sessions more effectively. We also joined a study group together to get different perspectives and support on the tough topics. It wasn't easy at first, but she stuck with it. When she sat for the resit a few weeks later, not only did she pass, but she actually aced it, which was amazing to see. Seeing her succeed like that was incredibly rewarding. It was a reminder of how sometimes a small change in approach can lead to big improvements.
Describe a sport that you only have watched before but had not played by yourself. You should say what it is, when you watched it, where you watched it, who you watched it with, and explain how you felt about it.
Basketball is a sport I've often enjoyed watching, but never actually played myself. The first time I really got into watching it was during the NBA Finals a few years back. It was around mid-June, and the games were broadcast live on TV. I remember watching it at home in our living room. My brother, who's quite the basketball enthusiast, invited me to watch the final game with him. He thought it would be more exciting to have someone else to share the experience with, and he wasn't wrong at all. We had some snacks ready and were both geared up in front of the television, excited to see the outcome. The energy of the game was electric. There's something about the pace of basketball. It's really fast-moving, and the players are incredibly skilled, doing all these impressive dribbles and jumps. And even though you're watching through a screen, the atmosphere pulls you right in. The crowd's going wild, the buzzer sounds, players are hustling. It's almost like you can feel the energy buzzing through the air. Honestly, I felt quite thrilled watching it. Even though I wasn't playing, the constant lead changes and tight scores kept me on the edge of my seat. It's a dynamic game, and you can't help but feel a part of the action. That night, I really got why people are so passionate about basketball. I learned a lot about the game, like the rules and some strategies, which made it even more interesting. So yeah, watching basketball turned out to be really engaging, and it was great bonding time with my brother too.
Describe a special meal that someone made for you. You should say, who did it? When and how did he/she cook? What and why did he/she cook? Explain how you felt about the meal.
A couple of summers ago, I had the pleasure of visiting my grandmother, who lives in a different province, for a few weeks during my holiday break. It was a refreshing change of pace from my usual routine, and one particular day stands out because of a meal she prepared just for me. Now, my grandma has always been an incredible cook, but that day, she decided to make her special chicken stew. I remember it was a sunny afternoon. She spent hours in the kitchen, chopping up fresh vegetables and simmering the chicken until it was perfectly tender. She told me she chose this dish because it was my grandfather's favorite, and she thought I might love it just as much. The aroma filled the whole house, and by the time we sat down to eat, I was incredibly excited to try it. The stew had a rich, comforting flavor that was both familiar and unique at the same time. There was something about the way the herbs mingled with the chicken that made it unforgettable. As we ate, she shared stories about her childhood and my grandfather's antics, which made the meal even more special. It wasn't just about the food, you know. It was the warmth and love that came with it. I felt really cherished and connected to my family's history through that meal. Reflecting on that day, I can say it was one of those perfect moments where everything just felt right. The food was amazing, but the feelings of being loved and connected to my roots were what truly made it special.
Describe a new law that you want to implement in your country. You should say what law it is, what changes this law has, whether this new law will be popular, and explain how you came up with the idea of this law.
Well, if I had the chance to introduce a rule in Vietnam, I'd definitely go for one that targets littering. You know, it really bothers me how some streets and parks are just covered in trash. So, I'd propose a strict penalty for anyone caught throwing garbage in public places. Instead of just telling people not to do it, there'd be a hefty fine to really make them think twice. This regulation would work by setting up fines that are big enough to deter people from littering. For instance, tossing a small piece of paper might land you a fine, but throwing away something larger, like a soda can, would result in an even higher penalty. I think the key here is to make the consequences tough enough to encourage people to keep their trash until they can dispose of it properly. Now, about whether this law would be welcomed, I guess it might not be popular at first. People generally don't like being told what to do, especially if it hits their wallet. But over time, I believe attitudes would change. As places start looking cleaner and more inviting, I think people would start seeing the benefits. The idea for this rule came to me during a visit to Singapore. It's amazing how clean it is there. They have similar laws and it works wonders. I thought to myself, why not try something like this back home? It could really help improve the environment and make our public spaces more pleasant for everyone. So yeah, that's the law I'd love to see in place.
Describe a time when you moved to a new school. You should say when it was, why you moved to a new school, how old you were then, and explain how you felt about it.
I remember quite clearly the period when my family relocated from Binh Thanh district to Thu Duc in Ho Chi Minh City, so I had to move to a new primary school there. I was about 9 years old at that time, so the whole experience was quite a big deal for me. The main reason we moved was that my parents got new jobs closer to Thu Duc, and commuting from our old place started to become really impractical. Adjusting to a new primary school was initially tough. I mean, everything was different, from the teachers and the school environment to the classmates. On my first day, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. There was this buzz of meeting new friends, but at the same time, a bit of anxiety about fitting in. The school itself was larger than my previous one, with more students and a wider range of activities. During the first few weeks, I remember feeling a bit overwhelmed. However, the teachers were really supportive, and they played a huge part in helping me adjust. They were very understanding and always ready to help whenever I felt lost or confused. Gradually, I started making friends. We would spend time during breaks and after school, playing soccer or sharing stories, which made me feel more at home. What helped a lot was joining the school's karate club. It was a great outlet for me to express myself and bond with classmates who had similar interests. Looking back, although the move was challenging, it was also a time of growth. I learned a lot about adapting to new situations and the importance of being open to change. It definitely shaped me into who I am today, more resilient and open to meeting new people and experiencing new things.
Describe a song that you remember from your childhood. You should say what song it is, when you heard it, who sang this song to you, and explain why you still remember this song.
I'd love to talk about a melody from my younger days, The Little Stork. It's a Vietnamese song that pretty much every kid from my generation knows. I think this song was something of a childhood anthem for many kids in Vietnam. I first came across this tune way back when I was really young, probably around 4 or 5. My mom used to sing it to me quite often. It's a lovely little song in Vietnamese, and she had this sweet way of singing it that made even the simplest words feel special. This song, The Little Stork, it's got this catchy, simple melody, but it's the lyrics and the way my mom sang them that made it stick. The lyrics tells the story of this little stork sitting on a bamboo branch, and they use its adventures to teach kids how to act right. And there's this gentle vibe about it that just made me feel, I don't know, peaceful and happy. It was like her way of calming me down or cheering me up, depending on the day. Now, looking back, I think one of the reasons why this song is still so memorable to me is that it connects me to my roots. It's a piece of my childhood, a reminder of those simpler, carefree days. It became a part of so many moments. Like, my mom would sing it when she was doing something around the house or during bedtime to help me sleep. It kind of became our little song, something that was just ours. It's more than just a tune, it's a memory, and those don't fade away easily.
Describe the place where you took photos more than once. You should say what the place is, how often you take photos there, what you photograph there, and explain why you like to take photos there.
The place I'm going to talk about is Cheese Coffee, specifically the branch we often go to in District 1 of Ho Chi Minh City. My friends and I have made it our favorite spot, and honestly, I've taken photos there more times than I can count. When it comes to what I photograph there, it varies. The main attractions are definitely the drinks, especially their signature tangerine tea, my all-time favorite. It's not only delicious, but also looks amazing, with vibrant colors that really pop in photos. I also love capturing the other beautifully crafted beverages they serve. Each one is like a little piece of art. And of course, no trip to Cheese Coffee is complete without a bunch of selfies with my friends. We always try to get creative, using different angles or capturing candid laughs, which makes each visit memorable. The reason I love taking pictures at this particular Cheese Coffee branch is all about the atmosphere and how it feels like a little escape in the middle of the city. Every time you go, there's a different vibe depending on the time of day or the season. Morning light makes the place look all fresh and vibrant, which is perfect for those drink shots. In the evenings, it's all cozy, with soft lighting, which I think is great for chilled-out selfies with friends. Gradually, taking photos at Cheese Coffee is more than just capturing images. This place has become a part of my life. It feels like every picture tells a part of our story, our friendship, hanging out, sipping on something delicious, and just enjoying the city life together. That's why I keep going back, and why my phone's photo album is packed with snapshots from there.
Describe an invention that is useful in your daily life. You should say what the invention was, what it can do, how popular it is, and explain whether it is difficult or easy to use.
I'd love to talk about the Apple Watch, which has become quite a handy gadget in my everyday routine. Essentially, this is a digital smartwatch that does a lot more than just tell the time. It allows you to make calls, send messages, track your health and fitness activities, and even control smart appliances in your home. As for how popular it is, well, I'm confident that they are everywhere. They're pretty common these days, not just among young folks or tech enthusiasts, but really with anyone interested in staying fit or just being more in tune with their health. You see them just as much in professional settings as you do in gyms or casual hangouts. Using it is super easy in my opinion, which is one of the best parts. It pairs seamlessly with an iPhone, making it incredibly intuitive. You can customize what notifications you want to receive, change the watch face to suit your style or mood, and access a whole suite of apps with just a few taps. And if your hands are full, just say, "Hey Siri," and ask whatever you need, setting reminders, getting directions, you name it. Honestly, the ease and functionality of it are what make it so integral to my daily routine. Whether I'm trying to stay on top of my meetings, needing a quick weather update, or monitoring my physical activity during a busy day, it's my go-to tool. It feels like having a personal assistant right on my wrist, always keeping me on track and even encouraging me to move a little more or take a minute to breathe when things get hectic. And I've come to rely on it a lot more than I initially thought I would.